Today I want to show you how to make this candle wreath similar to the one that I made just a couple weeks ago using Unique in the Creek boards, but this time I'm going to use wire forms. Let's get started. I want to show you the forms I'm going to use today. First, I'm going to be using this 10-inch wire form that you can get from most supply stores, but I'm going to use it a little differently. See how the front of this form curves? I'm going to put that to the back, and what is normally the back of the wreath will be used as the front. I know it sounds confusing, but I'll show you what I'm talking about here in just a little bit. Now for the second form I'm using for the candle part of the wreath, I was thinking of using a cross form or even a candy cane form and cut them down. But since I know that many of us are having a tough time finding wreath forms at Dollar Tree, I decided to try something different. I have this cooling rack from Dollar Tree that we can use to make several candles, and I'll show you how I do that in just a bit. For the poinsettia, I'm going to use poly burlap in both cream and eucalyptus green. You can use whatever colors you'd like, but since I have this cream colored poinsettia to use as the center, I thought I would go with a more neutral, soothing color palette today. So for the first petal, I'm making 2 large leaves for either side. I don't know the name of the petal, but I saw it a few months ago in a video from Julie's Wreath Boutique. I'm going to call it the larger Star Trek, even though it's just a tad different. So I cut the mesh to 14 inches using a rotary cutter. I'm going to have the finished edge on the top and bottom curl side up. Bring the top right corner down so that there are about 2 inches from the finished edge to the cut edge on both sides. So I put my finger right here where the 2 edges meet. Go straight up from there, which should be the middle of the folded edge, and fold it again from left to right. Adjust it however you need until the folded edges are lined up. So from the tip straight down and up just about an inch from the bottom, you'll want to give it a good pinch. Then 1 scrunch, and then you'll see just above where the finished edge is there. You'll do a second scrunch. Then we do 2 scrunches on either side. Now, cup the petal upward a little and do any adjusting you need to. Then I'll take a 6-inch zip tie and start to secure it, but not all the way. I want to be sure that the petal from the tip to the zip tie is just about 6.5 inches. Then I tighten up the zip tie and that's it. After that, we cut off the excess zip tie and then trim off the excess mesh from the bottom. For the rest of the poinsettia, I'm going to make the Star Trek petal. I cut the mesh at 10 inches again using a rotary cutter. So we have a 10 by 10 piece of mesh curl side up, and we turn it into a diamond shape. I always like to make sure my finished edges are on the top right and bottom left. Take the top corner and bring it down to meet the bottom corner. Kind of flatten out the folded edge on the top the best you can, then straight up from that bottom corner in the middle of the folded edge, fold that again, but from right to left, and then I spin it to the right so the double folded edge is facing towards me. I'll get my finger underneath the bottom of the mesh here and then squeeze these ends together. This is what it looks like at this point. Now just push this down right here in the middle and squeeze that together. You can see from the front how it's cupped. So I'll take another 6-inch zip tie and start to zip tie it again, just barely getting the zip tie started. I'm going to measure this from the top corner to the zip tie. I want it to be 5 inches. Tighten the zip tie just a bit, then bring it around to the front. Make sure each side is even and do any adjustments you need to, then tighten up the zip tie. cut off the excess zip tie and trim off the excess mesh from the bottom. So you can see the double folded edges on the right side of each of these petals. I like to make sure all of my petals are basically the same. Again, I'm only making 2 of the larger Star Trek petals in the green, and then I'll make 4 of these smaller Star Trek petals in green, and then a bunch of them in the cream. I'm guessing it should be close to 30 cream petals. Okay, so getting back to the forms, with this 10-inch round form, I'm going to place it onto some plastic canvas. Now, I only use the 5 mesh plastic canvas, which has larger holes and the zip ties fit better. Again, we are going to use the back of this form as the front. So I'll take my Sharpie and trace out the outside ring of this form. Cut it out, and then attach the plastic canvas using 4-inch zip ties. So you may notice that I put 1 zip tie in each section of the form, but I didn't tighten them quite yet because I want to be able to move that plastic canvas around so that I can see that one of the crossbars is going to be even with the grid of the plastic canvas. Once I get that straightened up, now I'll tighten up the zip ties. And where that crossbar is, that's now going to be the top of the flower. So if we use the grid of the plastic canvas, we know that when you go straight down from that crossbar, that's the middle of the wreath. Now I'm going to turn this form over and use my cutting mat as my guide. And where you can see each corner of that center square, that should meet up with the inner ring of this form. And that's how you know you've got your center. I'm going to mark that center spot with my Sharpie. I initially thought I was going to make the candle for this wreath a little smaller, but once I cut it out of this cooling rack, I realized it was a bit too small. It was just 2 inches wide and 8 inches tall. So I'm going to cut out another piece here and make this piece 3 inches wide and 12 inches tall. So using my wire cutters, I'm cutting this wire rack right along the edge of the piece that I'm going to use. The wire is pretty thick, so it would take a little extra oomph. I'll add the plastic canvas to this using 4-inch zip ties, and then we're ready to start making the wreath. So you can see I marked the plastic canvas with my Sharpie. I ended up marking where the candle should go on the top of the wreath, and then using the grid of the plastic canvas, I also marked where the center line should be from side to side, so I know where to put my leaves. So now for the first leaf, I'm going to be putting a 6-inch zip tie in about 3 holes in from the outside ring. I'll put the zip tie in 1 hole, skip that hole where the center line is, and then come back out on the very next hole. This can be a little awkward having the wire of the form back there, but we can work around it. Now I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I like to start the zip ties, and then I'll put the larger leaves in there and tighten them up. So now you can see the hole I went into. I want to skip a hole and then go 1 hole over. Again, I put the zip tie in 1 hole, skip a hole, and then come out the next one. I want these petals pretty close to each other. Then I'll do the same on the other side of the large leaf. Again, skip just 1 hole and put the zip tie on the next hole over. And then I'll do the same thing on the other side of the wreath. So for the first row of the flower petals, I know I want to put my zip ties just inside of where that inner ring is. And I'm going to go all the way around except for where my candle is going to go. I don't need to put a flower petal right there in the middle. However, I do want to put some just inside where the candle is going to go so that the zip ties are hidden. Using a wire form with a plastic canvas like this instead of using a board from Unique in the Creek gives us just a little more freedom of how close or far apart we want to put our petals. If you'd rather use a UITC flower board, check out my previous video that I have linked here. The choice is yours, whichever base you decide is easier for you to use. I'd love to hear for your opinion, which base you think is better. So I went all the way around except for the very top where the candle will go. I ended up using 19 petals for this first row. So for the next row, I'm going to go just about an inch in from the bottom of the petals from the previous row. Again, I'm going to try to keep these petals close together. I ended up using 9 petals for this inner row. So for the candle flame, I'm going to use horizontal wide stripe mesh instead of poly burlap. I have 3 different colors of mesh in natural, yellow, and cream, keeping the earthy, rustic elegance vibe I'm going for. So to make this flame, I'm going to start making a Star Trek petal and then stop at this point and secure it with a clothespin. And I'll do that with all 3 colors. Now I'll put the cream on top of the yellow, leaving just about a ½ inch on either side, and put those 2 on top of the natural that would go in the back, again leaving about a ½ inch. As we did with the other Star Trek petals, I'll turn it to the side, but this time I'm going to give it a hefty, good pinch right there in the middle, making sure I get all 3 pieces of mesh in there. Then bring each side up to meet in the middle. Then I'll take a 6-inch or even an 8-inch zip tie because this is quite thick, and zip tie all of that together, making the petal just about 6 inches from the tip down to the zip tie. As I'm tightening the zip tie, I'm going to move the nub of the zip tie over to the side so it's not in the way for when we attach this flame to the candle form. Cut off the excess zip tie and the mesh, and we're good. I want to attach the flame to what will be the back of the candle. So I'm going to put the zip tie on that first row of holes of the plastic canvas, stick the flame in there so that the front of the flame is facing down, and then secure it to the candle form, just like that. Now for what I'm going to use to wrap the candle form. If you wanted to use ribbon, you most definitely could do that. I'm going to use white poly burlap. I'm only using white so it doesn't blend in with the flower too much. I'm going to cut the mesh at 5 feet. Now, lengthwise, right there in the middle, I'm going to fold it once and then fold it one more time and then clip it. Then I'll go down either side, clipping every 6 inches or so. Now I'm going to flip it over so that the folded side is at the top. And I'm going to start putting the mesh on this form on the back. Just to make sure it's secure, I'll put an 8-inch zip tie in here right next to the flame petal. But the zip tie will be going from the top of the candle and down 2 holes. So I scrunch the end of the mesh and secure it to the form. And then cut off any frays you can. Now, wrap this around the top, making sure everything is good and covered. As you wrap, take off each clip. Now I'm going to start wrapping it at an angle so it starts to go down the candle form. I want to put a zip tie right here so that we can hang this wreath. I think right here would be a good place to put it, just at the bottom of the mesh here. Now I'm going to get the zip tie started and then cut off the very top of the zip tie. Then we'll start wrapping it some more. Take your time, make sure it's nice and tight and everything looks good as you're going along. So now we need to think about where this is going to connect to the wreath. This wire on the back of the candle form is going to be very close to where the outside ring of the poinsettia is. So I'm going to put an 8-inch zip tie going up and down so it can go around that outside ring. Now, I did this wrong this time, and I had to go back and fix it here later on in this video, so bear with me. I should have put the zip tie in with the nub of the zip tie on top. Here I did it on the bottom. Keep wrapping the rest of the candle form without covering the zip tie we just put in there. Cut the excess mesh off and secure the mesh once again with the zip tie there at the bottom. I also want to attach a different colored ribbon going around the bottom to look like a candle holder. I'm going to use this golden brown ribbon that I got from Pat Catan several years ago when it was still open, and I'm finally using it. So I'm going to start up here in the back just under where we put that zip tie, and I'm going to start wrapping several times up here at the top and then angle it down until we get to the bottom. And again, I will secure that with a zip tie. Okay, remember where I put that zip tie in here to connect to the outer ring of the flower? I put it in there facing the wrong way. We need to put the zip tie in so that the nub is on top. So I will just push the mesh out of the way and get the zip tie in there correctly. I won't be able to go through the plastic canvas, so I'm just going to go around that bar right there, and we'll be fine. Don't you just love mistakes? To attach the very bottom of the candle, I put the candle form up against the flower form so I can gauge exactly where the zip tie should go. Then I'll go from the back through the plastic canvas of the flower, up and around the bottom of the candle, and back down through the plastic canvas of the flower, and zip tie it shut. But I'm not going to tighten it just yet. Now I'll attach the other zip tie around the outer ring of the flower going through the plastic canvas. I'm not going to pull this zip tie tight at all. If I pull it tight, the candle will lean backwards, and we don't want that. So before I attach the poinsettia, I'm going to take these petals at the bottom of the candle and bring them from behind it around to the front. Much better. So as I add the poinsettia to the center, I'm going to use the same zip tie and attach one more petal right there at the bottom of the candle. So I'm going to grab one more 8-inch zip tie, put it right in between the other two petals and below the bottom of the candle. So this poinsettia had a long stem. I cut off most of the stem, leaving maybe 4 inches, and then bent it to the side using needle nose pliers. I'm going to try to stick that stem underneath the candle form. But since there's a zip tie in the way, I have to go a little bit to the side of the zip tie. So you can see that I shoved that in there pretty good. Now I'll put this last petal in here and secure it all with that zip tie. So there's only a couple more things that I want to do. I want to add a little more to the center of the poinsettia. So I got these berries from the at-home store. I've actually been using these berries in my Christmas tree the last few years. I just love how they're like a frosted neutral color. I'm going to take each berry one by one and glue them to the center, adding them to the cream-colored ones already attached to the flower. Then I'm also going to add this greenery that I believe I got from Joann Fabrics before they closed. I'll just hot glue these sporadically here and there, and then we're done. So this is the finished candle wreath done with the wire form. If you wanted to put this in like graveside, take a look at these. These are something that you know, like for the rent signs and stuff like that. You can get them at Lowe's. I actually got some off of Amazon. I think it was a pack of 20, but you can use this. See how we have this back here? Just slide that up, just like that. And then you could like zip tie that to the back. And there you go. You can put that down into the ground and you have, you know, something that goes graveside. I think that would be fantastic. Something like this would go perfect in a cemetery. So that's just something to think about. If you haven't seen the video showing you how to make this wreath using Unique in the Creek boards, I will put the link here, and I would love to hear from you your thoughts. My name is Patty Davis. I'm with Crooked Tree Creations, and I'll see you in our next video.